General Lawson's comments are, of course, as wrong as they are a representation of everything that's pervasive in the military. So will the Prime Minister himself commit to implementing Justice Deschamps' recommendations in order to put an end to this toxic culture within our military with regard to sexual assault and sexual misconduct? That culture is wrong. It has to be changed from the top. Will the Prime Minister act?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, I found the General's comments offensive, inappropriate, completely unacceptable. Sexual misconduct, sexual harassment are unacceptable in any institution, and I think we are all very clear on that. There is no excuse for it, Mr. Speaker. The General did immediately apologize for his comments, but I would point out, Mr. Speaker, that the men and women in the military, they commissioned the report on this particular issue, gave a series of recommendations. The Armed Forces, General Whitecross, are in process of implementing those things immediately, and I do not think we should do anything that should slur all of the men and women in uniform.
Speaker, does the Prime Minister still believe that all senators meet the residency requirements to sit in the Senate? And if so, would he be kind enough to tell us where Senator Carolyn Stewart Olson lives?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, after a complete audit, the Leader of the NDP gets up and makes an accusation against someone who's accused of absolutely nothing. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is the Senate has done an audit and the Senate is responding to its recommendations. What hasn't been responded to is the NDP taking public money and putting it into their own party organization. That is what was done in the sponsorship scandal. They've done that at a level of 3 times all of the accusations against senators combined. It is totally unacceptable, and I look forward to Canadians passing judgment.
Speaker, Nigel Wright told the RCMP that he briefed the Prime Minister on the media lines for the Duffy deal. Wright said in an email that he had, quote, the good to go from the PM, unquote. So why did the Prime Minister claim that he had never given Wright any instructions regarding the Duffy scandal? Good to go seems like a pretty clear instruction.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as the Leader of the NDP knows very well, he is quoting from an RCMP report that thoroughly examined this matter, was given access to all documents, and was very clear that I knew nothing of this particular matter. Unlike him, who signed all of the papers that took the money inappropriately and fraudulently out of the House of Commons, for which he will have to answer.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the question, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition has the floor.
The question, Mr. Speaker, is just that. Is the Prime Minister good to go? Is he good to go to swear to these statements under oath on a witness stand? If the Prime Minister is called to testify in the Mike Duffy trial, will he appear or will he hide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, as those who have investigated this have said that I am neither a participant nor a witness to any of these events, there is absolutely no reason why I would be before the court, Mr. Speaker, but I would invite him to have the RCMP look at his files on the $400,000 he personally took and the $3 million his party took out of the House of Commons.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, now that we've heard the Prime Minister about the Liberal-Conservative kangaroo court, why don't we look at what real courts have had to say about the Conservative record? 2006, convicted in court of cheating in the In-N-Out scandal. 2008, convicted of cheating in the Dean Del Mastro affair. 2011, convicted in court for cheating in the robocall scandal. The Prime Minister's team has been convicted of cheating in every single election he has won. What safeguards has he put in place to try to ensure that his team doesn't cheat this time around?
party that itself has been found guilty of inappropriate robocalls has been forced to return union funds that they illegally raised and knowingly did so, Mr. Speaker. And, of course, Mr. Speaker, still $2.7 million taken out of the House of Commons by the NDP, not for any parliamentary purpose, for the use of its own party offices across the country. This is exactly the kind of thing that happened in the sponsorship scandal, and the NDP will be held accountable for it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is using Bill C-51 to attack our rights and freedoms while offering no proof that this law will actually protect Canadians. If the Prime Minister is so confident of the legality of Bill C-51, why doesn't he simply refer it to the Supreme Court prior to royal assent?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Bill C-51 gives our law enforcement and security agencies all of the powers that are typically had across major Western governments to deal with the very real security threats, things like sharing information between departments, having the ability to use peace bonds in case of imminent threat, and I could go through those, Mr. Speaker. Of course, the NDP, Mr. Speaker, is always against these things, always against this kind of thing, votes against every single piece of security legislation ever put forward because of their extreme and ideological positions. And what would you expect? What do you expect from a leader who thinks Osama bin Laden is still alive and there's no such thing as a terrorist attack in Canada?
Order! 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 The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
400,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs have been lost while this Prime Minister did absolutely nothing. 60% of the jobs created over the past 6 years are precarious, part-time, or contract work. In Ontario, that number is a whopping 83%. Is that the Prime Minister's plan for middle-class families to support themselves with part-time jobs?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I say it again, it's very clear in Statistics Canada's report, 1.2 million net new jobs since the end of the recession. Overwhelmingly full-time, high-paying in the private sector, the best record in the G7 by a considerable stretch, Mr. Speaker. But we shouldn't expect the leader of the NDP to know his facts, because yesterday, of course, he was out there saying businesses need to pay higher taxes. Then asked, what is the tax rate exactly? Well, he didn't know and stated it 3 points lower than it actually is. Typical NDP, they don't know what the taxes are, they just know everybody's taxes have to be higher.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Heading into a previous election, the Prime Minister handed over a $5 million cheque at Electromotive Diesel in London, Ontario. Only problem is the plant shut down just a while later and the jobs were shipped to the U.S. Heading into this election, the Prime Minister included footage of the Chevy Camaro assembly line in Oshawa. Only problem is that it was shut down and the jobs have been shipped to the U.S. So will the Prime Minister admit that his plan isn't working, or at the very least, will he please stop visiting assembly lines?
Hear, hear! The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Or at least the leader of the Liberal Party knows when to stop getting up. Mr. Speaker, the government's job creation record in a period of global economic uncertainty is not paralleled among major industrial countries. We've done that with a balanced budget and with lower taxes for Canadian businesses and Canadian workers and Canadian families. And every sector, the automotive sector, the exporters and manufacturers, are strongly supportive of the government's economic action plan, and nothing is going to convince those businesses or Canadian workers to buy the snake oil that somehow high taxes and big deficits are going to bring about greater prosperity. People can see what NDP policies have done in other countries. They're not going to have them here.
Order. We still have a lot of names left to get through, and we're losing valuable time. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition has...
Speaker, that's the kind of arrogance that could mean that this is the Prime Minister's last question period, so I hope he doesn't mind. We've got a couple more. The Prime Minister's plan is not working. The Prime Minister has failed. That's why Canadians want change. As families struggle to make ends meet, the Prime Minister is telling seniors they'll have to wait an extra 2 years to retire, raising the retirement age to 67. The Prime Minister forgot to mention that in the last election campaign. Can he please tell Canadians today what he's hiding up his sleeve for the next time around?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, I remind the Leader of the NDP it will be Canadians, not him, who decides the result of the next election. Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand we are living in a global economy that is very troubled. They also understand, Mr. Speaker, as they look around the world, that there is absolutely no better place to be than this country, Canada. We have, Mr. Speaker, we have a balanced budget. We have lower taxes for Canadian families, businesses and workers. We have more money that's going into the pockets of our senior citizens and families, Mr. Speaker, and I don't believe anyone's going to blow that by buying the high-tax snake oil of the NDP.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians have already decided and they want change, Mr. Speaker. Did the Prime Minister ask Pope Francis to apologize on behalf of the Catholic Church for its involvement in the horrors of residential schools? Est-ce que le Premier ministre a demandé des excuses au Pape François pour le rôle que l'Église catholique a joué dans les pensionnats autochtones? On ne veut pas savoir quel document a été transmis. Il a rencontré le Pape. Est-ce qu'il a demandé des excuses, oui ou non? Did he ask for an apology, yes or no?
Honourable Prime Minister.
This government has apologized for that. We've brought to the attention of the Pope and the Catholic Church the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It will be up to the Catholic Church to decide how to respond to the recommendations that are pertinent to them. But, Mr. Speaker, the kind of change Canadians are seeking is change that means more prosperity, lower taxes, greater trade. That's the kind of change they're looking for. They're not looking for the high-tax, protectionist, anti-prosperity agenda of the NDP.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Instead of asking Canadians to give up their freedoms, the Prime Minister ought to be showing a little respect for the people who fought for our freedoms, our veterans. The Prime Minister has closed veteran service centres, ignored a rash of military suicides, and let his minister literally berate those who served our country. Will the Prime Minister make a show of good faith and commit to reopening those 9 veterans' offices?
Speaker, Canadians' veterans services under this government are the best in the world. We've augmented those services across all fronts, Mr. Speaker, and provided more points of service to Canadian veterans than ever before. Mr. Speaker, the men and women who serve in uniform and who have served in uniform, they can witness the kind of slur made earlier on them by the Leader of the NDP. They know who is on their side, and it is this party.